Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Will Simpson. I am an event manager here at Upwork, and we're joined today by Evan Fisher, who's going to be talking about how he's been able to multiply his earnings and the different techniques and how you can apply that to yours as well. Evan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here, and thank you for having me, Will. Glad to be back. Basically, I feel like we had a lot of fun the last time around, and hopefully it was pretty useful. Incidentally, this is a topic that I think a lot of people have asked me about, and I I think that is not really too much covered in a lot of the information that's available out there of like, okay, so how do you grow, right? Uh, and I always found it interesting because it's it's a little bit different for everybody. Everybody's path is going to be different, and preface for all of this, like this is not going to apply for absolutely everybody, but it's kind of like a framework that I found that really works in growing my own earnings and building up in my Upwork journey. So, do you mind if I dive right in, Will?
Please have at it. And just a quick note to everyone in the room here. Throughout the presentation, I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A. If you have a specific question, I would suggest you put it in the Q&A section. It's just easier for me to follow, and I'll bring it up with Evan either in live time or at the end for the Q&A. So feel free to chat away, and I'll engage with you there. Evan, take it away.
Okay, so following on from what Will said, if you have a question, then pop it into the Q&A, and Will, please interrupt me profusely. So, bit of background for anybody who doesn't know me or what I've done, and if you're just hearing about this person, talking to you for the first time ever, a little bit about my backstory. I was working as a consultant. My job, just like from 1 month to the next, totally went away. And it was like, all right, I have to figure out what to do next, because I had at the time a wife and a 3-month-old little girl to take care of, $10.21 in my bank account, and let's figure it out. And so a lot of motivation there. And Upwork turned out to be the solution for me to be able to earn my way out of a pretty bad place. And it's been quite a journey, and I've been very fortunate along the way, because Upwork has allowed me to grow from basically being in a place where I had no opportunity to get another job into, hey, here's a bunch of cool stuff that I've done, and incidentally become one of the highest earning people on the platform. So I've done tons and tons of cool stuff, worked with some really fantastic people through Upwork, and ended up in TechCrunch, Forbes, Inc., a book, and even started a YouTube channel around it. Massive thumbs up in the chat if you know about me from the YouTube channel. So one of the things that has occurred to me that I think is important for anybody that wants to grow on Upwork is that you absolutely can grow your earnings. And in fact, you can multiply your earnings. So for example, for me, my first job that I ever took on Upwork, it was a $200 job. But within 12 months, I was charging over 10 times that for a similar scope of job. Now, that doesn't mean that, direct A to B, it's, the exact same thing. A couple of things were different, and there is a process to get there, but you can multiply the earnings that you're getting from an individual job as long as you follow a bit of a process. And I've sort of distilled it down, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, what I've got on the screen right now about my first job, that's not just like a first job only thing. It's not about just your first 12 months, because just as much as you can multiply your earnings at, in the early days of when you're on Upwork, the same thing applies for later on, because even if you are advanced level, you can still grow and actually multiply your earnings based on implementing a couple of things. Now, again, not a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. There is no catch-all, but there's a bunch of general principles and a little process that I've found that really worked for me, and maybe it's going to work for you as well. So here's how it sort of went for me. First, it was about mastering the client-facing basics, and we're going to talk about each one of these things. Then developing the hard skills, and then some weird stuff as part of that process of growth. And so here is how I think about your relative rate versus what you are charging versus what you could be charging. So I've got a bunch of different levels to where you can be at in your Upwork journey with, the basically the level 2 where is kind of your starting point, where you have no reviews and you're just sort of baseline. You don't have anything positive. You don't have anything negative either. You can still go down from there where it's going to be a challenge to climb up. But as you go up that pyramid, the effective rates and your earnings are going to be higher, with the top of that pyramid being the best of any industry that you're in. So for example, if you're in design, it might be like a pentagram. If you're in a kind of development role, then it could be Ramotion. We've also got Clay for legal, Skadden, JP Morgan for banking, those sort of things. The best of the best being at the very, very top. And that's outside of Upwork, right? So that's just something. What's your comparator of, if you were a business, then who are you playing against that is at the absolute top of your industry, right? So we have different levels, and you can climb up as time goes on. But the thing of it is, it's not just your work quality that dictates where you're going to end up on that ladder, basically. Because as you go up in level by level, clients are going to be expecting more out of you. Things like going from level 1 to level 2, we're talking about on-time delivery as a baseline, right? Then graduate from level 2 to level 3, the expectation that's going to come along with higher quality work is going to be things like professional communication. And then level 3 to 4, much more consistent, frequent communication, expectations of this person is going to be keeping me updated throughout the project. I want to also, as a client, potentially pay some more and get it faster, expedited delivery, just like any other delivery service sort of thing. Think Amazon Prime, right? Then when we're talking about really getting up to that top level, you've got to be providing things like actual thought leadership, institutional quality processes, quality control, truly unique work. And as you go up, clients are going to expect more but in turn, your rates are going to increase. And so there's a way to get there. But the reason I know this is because I am a client, and in terms of Upwork, I think we've got at this point like $500,000 or $600,000 worth of spend on Upwork contracts. And what I can say to you is, you are being tested. If you are doing jobs on Upwork, you're getting tested. And whether it's actively getting tested by clients or passively getting tested by clients, you're getting tested on a number of different things, whether it's before you start a contract or during or as you're about to close things, or even afterward of how you approach potentially working together again. So things like whether or not you're delivering a scope of work to a client, which tells me as the client on the other side, if I'm your client, I understand then, okay, have you thought about this? Are we going to have any miscommunication here? Are there any misaligned expectations that are going to happen? If you didn't provide a scope, then that's probably going to be the case. You might only realize this later on down the track once you get into the project, but that is an indicator of what's going to happen, right? Little things that turn into, that means something much bigger. And so other things apply as well, like how quickly you have delivered a scope. For example, say you get on a call with a client and you have said, hey, listen, I'll give you a scope of work within 48 hours, right? Now, if you get that scope across them within, at that 48-hour mark, okay, you've met expectations. If it takes you 49 hours, then you have failed against your own expectations that you've set. Versus if you have promised for 48 hours, but then delivered half an hour later, then you have massively exceeded expectations that you set for yourself for that client. From the start, you're not even working together and you've already exceeded expectations. So under promising and over delivering, these things are tiny, 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 but they mean big things. And clients are looking for that because their job is tough. They've got to find the diamond in the rough. And they're looking at all of the little things when they're paying very close attention because they don't want to have to hire 5 different times. They want to hire one person who's going to do it right, do it well, and be able to be a good fit with what it is that they need. So you're getting tested on a lot of different areas every step of the way in the context of a job. Now, in mastering those things,
Evan, I wanted to jump in there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There was a few questions that were all related to a slide or two ago on the pyramid that was facing the other way about stage 2. And I just wanted to bring that up since there was quite a few questions rolled in.
This.
Yes. So a lot of people asking, how to get that first client, what can I do to stand out on stage 2? And I think a lot of that was sort of what we were talking on the next slide, but what are some of the primary factors you think that are most important to move from that tier 2 to tier 3, which is essentially, hey, I'm new to the platform?
Couple of things that if you're new to the platform, you probably want to be doing. The top 3 always in my head are going to be make sure that you have a very clean, crisp, and clear profile. Make sure that you are putting a fair amount of effort into writing compelling proposals. And that doesn't mean necessarily, have one structure and then, send that off. You've got to try different things. You've got to experiment with different types of proposals, different lengths, different things that you focus on. See what clients latch onto. You have to be experimenting with your proposals. And the third thing that is probably one of the easier things to accomplish that is within your control, especially early on, create high quality work examples. Find if I can say one thing that is going to be, I think of the most benefit is one of the things that I did very early on, extremely early on, probably within the first 2 months of that first job, I went and looked at, okay, who is in my space? And in my case, it would be like JP Morgan, right? Who is in my space that is the best of the best, right? And I'm talking, even outside of Upwork, I want to be, operating at their level. I want to be on the JP Morgan level. What are they doing for clients? What sort of work are they delivering? And is there a way that I can figure out to create something that is as good as what they do for my inspiration of my work examples that I can then show to potential clients on Upwork and say, this is the level of quality that you can get with me. And that turns into a value proposition of basically you get what the best in the business are going to deliver to you at a fraction of the price through me and more of a tailored service. Now, that is pretty compelling. And as long as you can figure out how to get, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but as long as you can figure out a way to get at least 85% of the way there toward what the best of the best are doing and delivering to their clients, and there will be examples all over the internet, then you're going to find that you move up so fast on this pyramid. And the work examples can be probably the biggest thing in making that happen. So want to focus somewhere, go look at who is the absolute best in this industry and figure out a way to showcase that you can do at least a closely similar kind of work, and you'll go so far so fast.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, for those folks that are maybe new to their segment of work, or they don't have clients to lean against, like I don't have, hey, here's an awesome client project I did, that's fine. Like I work in the graphic design space. I didn't have good portfolio examples of clients. So I just made things up. I said, here's a coffee shop logo, here's a coffee shop menu. No, these weren't clients, but it demonstrates what I can do. So find your own iteration of that. Even if you don't have client experience to lean upon, you can still show excellence in your deliverables.
Absolutely. And that's so important every step of the way, because I view it as Upwork is a reviews-based platform, right? But on top of that, Upwork is a results-based platform. So clients are not necessarily hiring you because they have like something in the goodness of their heart. And equally well, when I'm making a hire as a client, I'm not hiring somebody out of the goodness of my heart either. I'm looking at what can they do that is exactly what I want to achieve, and I look specifically and put a very, very heavy weight on what do the work examples look like. When you see something that is truly exceptional, it's wild to see. There is a lot of talent out there. It takes digging, but when you are consistently applying and you have a solid approach toward clients and you have really great work examples within the niche that it is that you're approaching, then yeah, wild things happen super fast. So with that comes to the point of like how clients are looking at you, because every client has their own funnel as well. They're looking at a number of different freelancers at any given time as well, and not everybody's going to make it, the entire way into their final. They're going to get the job equation. So first, they're looking at your profile, your work examples, your proposal, and that's that first cutoff step. Then if you meet with them, or how you communicate with them, for example via Upwork messages, then how does that go? And have you scoped out the project, and all right, what do we think about that? Then it's down to agreeing terms, getting that job or contract awarded, and every step of the way, that's when those tests are happening that lead to ultimately, once that job is being done, then how is it going? And are you actually still communicating? Are you easy to work with on changes? Are you receptive? Have you been delivering things on time? What's the overall general level of quality that you're delivering? The funny thing about all of this is that this is just a distillation of an actual thought process. I mean, I created this after I went through a process, which I'm going to be putting out a video in probably the next month or so about it, where I needed to hire a video editor. And I ended up having to go through about 100 different applications for video editors before I was able to find just like 5 to 10 that actually were able to get through just to the point of awarding the contract. And I hired all of them. But the interesting thing about that is they all handle the project in a very different way. Forget about the quality that comes out of it, but not everybody may get the job initially, but that may turn into, maybe for only 1, 2, or 3 people, subsequent work, long-term work, lots of recurring business that is like a weekly thing as opposed to like a one-off job. So all of that filters in, and clients do need to test every step of the way. You would be shocked if I told you that in certain instances, some freelancers out there, on every step of this funnel, there are big problems that a lot more people than you would think actually have. So, example, many people will copy paste their proposal, which, by the way, if you are a freelancer and you're worried about competition on Upwork, understand that in that example that I just mentioned, 50 to 60% of the people that had approached, and they had copy pasted their proposal, and it was absolutely clear. So with that, understand that you're not competing with anywhere near as many people as you think. But it goes so much further than that. Some people cannot manage to give an actual scope of work or estimate of how many hours a job might take. One of the core things for any client is, I need to know, what am I going to get? How long is it going to take? And how much is it going to be? Right? If you can't answer those questions,
Yeah,
it's
Evan, I wanted to
pretty tough.
pause on that one because there's quite a few good questions on that exact topic of scoping. So the most succinct one was, what type of questions do you ask during scoping with a potential client? Can you give us some examples of how we can be thinking through that and addressing it?
Yeah, that's something that we're actually going to get into a little bit more.
Oh, cool. Well, wait till we
With
dive into it then.
no, we'll preview it now.
Okay.
You brought it up. So, with scoping, you need to know the basics for whatever it is, whatever job it is that you do, right? And if you boil it all the way down, you want to only be asking the questions that are need to know at any given point of the job. There are certain things that you need to be vetting for and that you need to understand in order to do your job. For example, if I'm a graphic designer and will please like jump in and tell me that I'm wrong. If I'm a graphic designer, then the main things that I probably need to know is uh, how many revisions are we going to need to do on this? What format do you need the final result in? Do you have an existing color scheme that you want to use? Are there any design or brand guidelines that we need to be following along the way? And let's see, what else? Where can I find your image assets that you might want me to use? Or is it totally blank canvas? And can you give me a couple of examples, or can I even show you some examples and you just choose, yep, that's the sort of thing that I want to see. So that if those questions are answered, Will, you tell me this, if you have those questions answered as a graphic designer, then do you have a pretty good handle on that
Yeah,
job?
that's you 100% nailed it. And I think another way to reframe the answer is, this is where you can show your understanding of the context of what you do. If you program apps, then you need to understand, what does the app touch? Does it need to have a similar workflow as the other direct web address login of this thing? You need to be thinking of, what are all the things adjacent to what I do, and asking the questions accordingly. It shows the client that I know what I'm talking about. It's not just the logo I'm designing, it's the website, the flyer, the business card, the Zoom background. It's all those different things connected to the project you're doing. So it's you're asking the questions that show you know what you're talking about in a larger context.
Yeah. And that those larger context questions become more and more relevant the higher you go up this pyramid. Because one of the things that Chris Du, who is a really fantastic graphic designer with the channel The Future on YouTube, has said is, what's the difference? The question is, what's the difference between what Pentagram does and what an average graphic designer does? And Will, to what you said, that a design is going to touch things in totally different ways, and maybe it ends up on a billboard over here, and maybe it ends up on the side of a van in another context, or maybe it ends up being just a logo mark on the top of a web page or something like that. Understanding that context and even asking the question in the first instance is something that an average graphic designer is not necessarily going to do, not even going to know to ask or consider that this is a potential iteration and what you might need to use this for. But coming back to your question about what questions do you need to ask, you need to figure that out for your own job of like, what are the basics, the things that you have to know in order for you to do a good job. Because if you ask all those questions, and the one question that you didn't ask was, when do you need it by? And the answer to that was tomorrow, then you might have all of the rest of that information. But if you don't have the answer to that one question, that client, end of day tomorrow, is going to be chasing you saying, where is my design will? And kind of rightfully so, because you didn't ask that question and you should have. So coming up with those questions is extremely important in making sure that you're able to continue to grow on Upwork. And so being able to grow is kind of an exercise in thinking of it like this, which is one of the things that we had discussed previously, Will, which was if you want to make $100 an hour, then you got to be operating like you're making $200 an hour. And I like it to think of it as dressing for the job you want, not for the job you got. If you want a job at Google, I mean, all right, maybe a bad example, you probably wear a hoodie, but if you want a job at, somewhere, figure really, professional place, are you going to be wearing like flip-flops and shorts, or are you going to show up in a suit? So you got to be operating on a higher level, because eventually you will be on that higher level as long as you follow that path. And in this case, those soft skills are all about mastering those tests and knowing what is going to be expected from a general professional level, not just at the level that you're at, but at the next level, and then maybe even beyond, at true commercial rates. So when we're talking about those client-facing basics, it starts with just structured and organized communications, very clear of here is what's going on, here's what's happening tomorrow, and here is what I need maybe for you to do, Mr. and Mrs. Client, so that it is crystal clear every step of the way what you're doing. Your process should be clear. And again, think about every step of what you need to do in a given process. And the more clear and efficient you can make it and easier for a client, the better off you're going to be. Output, we're going to talk about work in a second, but just building the quality of your work. You also have to be actively avoiding red flag clients, which is something that I've talked about a lot in the past. And under promising and over delivering from the start. You can set your own hurdles. You're the one who's setting the expectations as the freelancer. This is not a you work for the client kind of relationship. Once you start thinking about it as you are working with the clients on the same level as them, and it takes two people to agree to work together. It takes the client to offer and you to press accept. So you're on the same level. If you are the one that is casually and gently leading the way and setting your own expectations for yourself, then set them in a way that you're stacking the deck such that you're going to be over delivering every step of the way. And you'll make it very, very easy for yourself. So it comes back to that simple premise that gets talked about a lot of, if you think that it's going to take you 2 days, give yourself 5. Because some stuff is going to happen all along the way, and you don't know what that's going to be. But if you think that it's going to take you 2 days, but realistically, if something happens and it's 3, then maybe give yourself 6. And then if you can deliver in 2, you have smashed expectations and you're well ahead of the curve. The only one who's setting expectations here is you. Now, do we want to pause there and hit any of the Q&A, or
yeah, there's quite a few good questions here, and one good comment I just wanted to call out: how to avoid red flag clients would make for a great webinar. You're absolutely right. Adding that to my list of things to do.
Yeah.
One of the good questions that came up was related to when you increased your rate. So I'm on Upwork. I've just increased my rate from 40 an hour to 60 an hour, let's say.
Yeah.
How do you know if that is successful, or if you've aimed too high, or how do you measure if you are accurately increasing your rate?
Okay, so come back to aiming as high as you possibly can. So that's first and foremost, aim as high as you possibly can. Then if you are aiming properly high and your work examples and portfolio reflect that, then a rule of thumb is this, because you're never going to get away from having client pushback on rates, especially when you raise them. But the best thing that you can have is a lot of potential clients to speak with. Basically, when you start to get more and more clients responding to your proposals, more and more potentially inbound invitations, which start to happen pretty quickly when you're doing things right, doing things well, shooting for the best, then you're going to find that you have a lot of options to work with, and you have a lot of shots on goal, that it's not like, oh, I'm going to just test out and see if that $60 amount is going to get accepted. When you are a busy person, then it's kind of supply and demand, in that there is very little supply of you as an individual, and demand of, well, if there are a lot of people that are coming after you because they want that level of superstar quality, well, then it's kind of an easy situation, and it's a luxury situation that you have put yourself in. No one is going to be doing that for you. But rough rule of thumb, simple answer on that, if more than 60% of the clients that you speak with, potential clients that you speak with, are pushing back on your new rate before you have locked in a job at that new rate, then go back to square one and see, is my work and the overall process that I'm putting out toward clients, is it actually worth that $60 an hour level? Look at what other successful freelancers, particularly on Upwork, are doing, and judge yourself against that. So yes, you can look at others on Upwork, but you want to be shooting for as high as you possibly can. Because if you're spending 10 hours on creating some great work examples, why not have the absolute highest that you can? That will make your path toward growing your rates far easier, far easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense? I hope that answers.
And I love the call out of looking what other folks are doing. Like, I know when you're an intermediate level freelancer shooting for that advanced level, you want to be looking definitely external, just to see who's the biggest people in the world that I can emulate. For people that are starting out, I think being able to look at other freelancers on the platform on Upwork gives you some real good training wheels, if you will. Can I build this graphic that so and so did? Yes. Are people happy to pay him that amount?
Let's look at that.
Yeah, then okay, then I can do that. So I find that especially when you're new to the game, it's a real easy way to just do side by side. Can I build that? Yes. Absolutely. Then I can charge that much, because that person's able to sell that all day. So similar to this, or in addition to this topic, people are asking about upskilling. So we're talking about, just hitting these different tiers. And I wanted to provide one resource in the chat right now. There is an annual report that goes out on in-demand jobs and skills. There's also a previous event that I did where it focused on, I think, marketing and tech. But before I pass it to you, Evan, for your feedback, one of the ways that I find where I should be upskilling is I look at the clients that are posting jobs that maybe are a little bit outside of what I can do. The big clients that, okay, Will's not ready for that client yet, but I will be soon. And I look at, what are the skill tags in there? And I look at my betters on Upwork that are really crushing it. And I say, what are the skill tags that they're doing? And I see those connection points. And if everyone's saying these 3 pieces of software, then guess what I'm learning?
Yes, exactly. Coming back to what you were saying about upskilling and building yourself. The graphic design, it's an easy one to showcase. And so as you are building things up, and coming back to like how this played for me, we've got the client facing basics. Then it's, what about those hard skills? The hard skills, easiest way to showcase it is if we've got the pyramid here of what clients are going to expect and what plays for the different levels. Soft, let's say, and an easy way of thinking through this, for me, it's in illustrations and graphic design. And so for me, one of the videos that I just put up on the YouTube channel this morning, which I'm not going to link in the chat, it's also to the point of, what about how do you approach upscaling things? It's about creating thumbnail images, YouTube thumbnail images. What do you see when when you're potentially going to watch a video on YouTube? And so first, let's look at like what's level 1, level 3, level 5, right? Level 1, like this is getting 1 star. It's not unless
It's
it's
got
for
a
the
bit of
community
charm. It's
value.
got a bit of charm.
Yeah, sure it does. That's so diplomatic of you, Will. But it's not great. So if we're then saying let's step up the pyramid, I figure somewhere around level 3 for something like this, which yours truly created, and you can tell that it's really not that great. If you're a graphic designer, you zoom in, you see like the green lines around heads. You see that my fingers are on fire, incidentally. So not great, not perfect, but hey, it might work. And I learned to do this in a short space of time. Versus if we're talking about what truly is at the top of the top, if you know Mr. Beast, then this looks like it's not that big of a deal. There's not that big of a jump in skills, it seems, from a graphic perspective. But we are talking about 196 million views. Okay, he's got a long track record and everything, but how hard is it really, if you are a designer, to create a thumbnail image like this? Will, if you had the direction of like do this, do that, etc., I imagine you'd be able to accomplish this, right?
Yep, it's good. Good job.
Yeah, so this is not something that I created, by the way. This is one of the famous thumbnails from Mr. Beast. And the thing about this is that there is so much more strategy that goes into this, and that's where the true value is. It's not necessarily in the hard skills, but you can see that there is a jump in skills, but it's more a jump in performance and strategy and broader understanding of something that is beyond just the simple, not so simple as I know now, skills of creating something in Photoshop. It's what is going to be compelling for the use case that I specifically need as a client. So level 1, level 3 in that respect is very, very different from level 5. So in growing your skills, growing your hard skills, it's important to understand, and this is what most people won't tell you, is that it's important to understand that growing your hard skills is not necessarily just growing your technical abilities. As somebody on Upwork, there's like a 90% plus chance that you are a knowledge worker, and the strategy and insights that you bring as a professional to the table are of significantly more value, even if you don't know it yet. But those things are of significantly more value to clients than you even realize. So when you're operating at that super high level, the real true difference between level 4 and level 5 and businesses that are at level 4 and level 5 is the thought part of it, the thinking, the strategy, not necessarily in the execution. Exceptional work applies in both of these cases, but the strategy and thought and how you get that part across to clients, that's the real biggest jump between those two things. So in growing yourself along that path, especially if you're going in the sort of 2, 3, 4 range, then it is a skills game. But the good news is, in order to grow in that skills game, for me in particular, for example, I had never opened up Photoshop in, okay, I had like 6 times, and every time I rage quit and I was furious because I couldn't do it, right? I learned how to do this using free YouTube videos only in the space of 24 hours, right? That's it. And I was on a timer, and if I didn't learn how to do it, and that was basically the concept for this video that I put out this morning. But the thing of it is, I know that I'm still not good at Photoshop, but if I've got a couple of different pieces, 3 different skills that I'm at least 85% as good as the best, and let's say one being in actual execution of a Photoshop design, and second being the strategy of what is going to make it a successful performing thumbnail or video, etc. Plus the third piece, let's say in this case maybe image composition, that I would say is beyond just a simple hard skill of being able to know which things to use in Photoshop. Put those three things together and apply it. If you are at least 85% as good as some of the best out there, then that's a pretty compelling value proposition, because then you can say, well, maybe I have a different, approach toward things, but I'm the sort of person who says, fluency in a language, right? You are fluent in a given language, in my book, if you can negotiate an insurance contract in that language, right? Pretty complicated stuff, pretty high level. You need to have technical, expertise to be able to do it. But that is, in my book, that is good enough. And to be honest, most clients will probably say the same thing if they're being reasonable. Same thing applies for skills. If you've got three skills at that sort of 85% or better level, not 99.9%, because that's really hard, but if you've got three different skills that you weave together, then that is an extremely compelling value proposition.
I wanted to pause here to bring up a question to what you've just been saying. The question I wanted to address was, this person's getting a lot of clients, but is finding that they're not paying enough. They're having an issue with their budget hitting where they want to be. And I think matching what you just said to what you were saying earlier, dress for the position you want, not the position you have. This all plays into the same way. Let's say you have these more budget clients right now. If you're simply delivering what the budget is paying for and acting accordingly, you're going to be stuck in a sort of loop. Whereas if you come into it delivering at that tier 4 or 5, even though they're only sort of asking for 2, you then can showcase why the budget needs to be raised. You can leverage that, even if not with that client, maybe with your next client. You can be like, look, I made this awesome tier 5 asset instead of the tier 2 you've been creating before. So I think it's a sort of cart and horse situation. You need to be doing the work even when it's not asked for, and involving those 3 different skills, not just the creation of the image, but the things surrounding it.
100%, 100%. So to that point, I would say 2 things. One, if you've got a job with a specific budget, I mean, you realistically, yes, you do want to be over delivering. And so that is absolutely a strategy, especially if you are able to showcase that work and that client will be fine with it, et cetera. Then yeah, by all means, go all out and produce the best thing that you possibly can. Because then when it shows what you can do, then I mean, you're going to be winning. It doesn't matter that you did it for $100 yesterday and you're asking for $200 for what appears to be the same thing today. That's something you're always going to get challenged on. But you got to show that you can do that tier 4, tier 5 level work in the first instance. And when you can, then a lot of big things will happen. It's a very helpful strategy. Now, if, for example, you're in a situation where you have either you don't have a job, or you have a client who has asked you to do a job and you want to do that super high level work, but you're just not going to be allowed to share it, then you got to invent your own job. You have to imagine that you do have an active job in the niche that you're going to be pursuing, and create your own case study work examples. Create a small portfolio, minimum 3, that are the best and highest representations of your skills. Because at a certain point in time, if you've got something that people want that is really that fantastic, that's what you want to show off. And especially if nobody paid you for it, then you have 1000%. You don't have anybody to ask of whether you or not you can use it. You can use it because you created it from scratch. So with that, sometimes it is really, really worth it to be doing work for free for yourself, because that is portfolio building, to really, truly show off the highest version of your skills, because that is what you want to hold up high, and that is going to help you multiply your rates and get clients to want to pay more. So that's the second thing that I would say in terms of skills building. But it doesn't have to take forever. You need a new skill, yeah. I've never opened up Photoshop except for 6 times before.
You give it away,
and
the
I was able to
secret
create
sauce
that,
on graphic
right?
designers.
Yeah, you just need the right motivation to be able to do it. But then the next piece is about aiming higher, right? Where it's not just your soft skills, it's not just your hard skills. You've got to be shooting for the absolute moon, because then that's when the weird stuff comes in. And the weird stuff, it depends every iteration of when you go through this cycle of, increasing your skills on the client facing side, developing out your hard skills, and then pursuing some of the weird things that you can potentially do to build out your and just improve your process. So for me, a lot of that part of the process was making meetings shorter and more efficient. I was spending tons of time with people who just would not buy. They would never buy. They just wanted to use my time as free, and just get some free advice. A quick hot take on what it was that they were doing, etc. That ended up being like hour-long meeting of things that were not paid. So that's where, to what we were talking about earlier about knowing which questions to ask, my approach was, hey, listen, what if I'm asking just the critical things throughout that process of getting to a scope with a client, and instead of going through, hey, how are you? What's the weather like? Where are you based? What does your mom do for, not trying to eliminate all of the extraneous stuff. What if I compressed a 60-minute call down into 10 minutes? Would it still work? My conversion probably doubled from doing that, maybe more, but probably about double while raising prices. So with that, when you were going from a 60-minute time block and just saying, all right, well, here's the things that I'm going to need to understand from you in order to be able to scope this out for you and understand the full breadth of this project, so that we can do things efficiently, and just run down your sort of checklist of things that you need to know, then you end up wasting a lot less time, and you could do 4 calls, 5 calls maybe in the same space of time that you would otherwise be just kicking things around with somebody who maybe is not that great of a fit, and you're speaking with more people. Weird stuff, right? Leading calls rather than following and just being as this. I've sort of figured out that at a certain point in time, you go from the person who gets hired into the expert who is figuring out whether or not this is a good fit to work together. And so once you decide you're going to become the expert on your area, then you should be leading those calls with clients, and instead of being the person who gets interviewed about, should this be why are you the right person to hire for this job? That's the one question that I can't stand. But that never comes up when you are the one who is asking all the right questions, because that's what people will come away from a call with. If you say, hey, listen, I've got a couple of questions, can I just run you through them? And you start giving them the hard-hitting questions of what it is that you actually need to know, that's going to make the project as effective as possible, then you're not going to get that question. So again, weird stuff. We can talk through more, but the other big things are cleaning things up, improving your call quality, doing some outside leadership, a little bit of outside marketing. There's a lot that goes into it, but it depends every single time, because the key to it is you can't just do it once. You got to rinse and repeat and go through that same cycle over and over again. And the thing of it is, anybody can do this stuff, and you can too. The question is, are you motivated enough to actually take action and do it? That's the real big deal here.
Absolutely. Great question on that Audrey posted on the topics about being leading the charge and sort of setting the tone there. What happens when you get into it, you land a sweet job, and then you realize a week in, I'm in over my head. Oh no, how do I navigate that situation so that I don't, so I'm not left with a really upset client and a bad review? What would you
All
suggest?
right. Yeah, I would suggest uh, that you're in quite a pickle. And unless there is something weird going on, it is self-imposed. And here's why. If you have scoped out the job, and when I say scoped, I mean provided, for example, even just a bulleted list of the who, what, when, where, why, how, here's the process, and here's what's going to happen, here's the deliverables that you're going to get, basic stuff, and sent that prior to accepting any contract, then if something is, you feel like you're in over your head, my question is then, what piece of that scope of work has the client wanted to deviate from that is different from what you had agreed to? So where are they trying to pull you, for example, in a goalpost move, which is unfortunately something that I see far too frequently. And in all the stuff that I do, yeah, it can happen. Where, for example, let's say I'm working for you, and we agree 3 iterations in our scope of work, and we end up at iteration 4, and what do I do? Probably swallow it, but I do mention it and say, hey, listen, we agreed 3, but I want you to be happy. Here's the 4th iteration. Then you come back and say, no, you know what? I need multiple more rounds to go through this. At that point in time, very simple answer, refer back to scope of work. Hey, we had scoped out for 3, happy to do more. Here's how much extra it's going to be in either time, hours, expected budget, and always overestimate that stuff, in order to account for the extra work that you need done. I'm happy to do it, but just understand that this is different from what we had originally discussed and agreed, and now we are deviating from this scope. So if you are in a situation where you're in over your head, then you've either taken on a job that you just don't have the requisite skills to actually execute on, or you probably didn't scope it out correctly, and you should be doing that on the next one. You want to get out of that project as quickly as you possibly can, and with as minimal damage as you possibly can. If it's very, very early in that project, then and you truly are in I don't have the skills to do this scenario, you don't want to be learning as you go. You can Google things, but when you're mid-project, that is a pretty bad solution, because you want to be absolutely 100% certain that before you even press the accept button on any contract, that you can guarantee that you can deliver an awesome result that this client is going to be super happy with. Otherwise, don't press accept.
Yeah.
It will only hurt you.
I think a lot of it comes down to, as you mentioned, sort of client selection. So I found that in these situations, honesty is paramount. It's honesty can be keeping the client honest. Hey, the scope of work was X, now it's X plus 3. That's fine, but let's take a look at it. Or it may be, hey, look, I understood the project to be ABC. Turns out it's HIJ. I don't actually have the right skills for that. I would suggest you repost a job with this specific information. And this actually ties into another question. What do you do when how do you get out of sort of working with a toxic client? I hope you don't experience it. We've all been there. And I will come back. It's one of my favorite topics. And it took me a while to figure it out, but I actually love firing clients. And I don't mean that in a malicious way. I love it because it did so much for me. When I can tell that I'm not a match for the client, whether that's a cultural fit, communication fit, expectation, whatever, I am very quick to be like, excuse me, client, looks like this is not going to be the right match. Here are my suggestions on how to find the person you're looking for. So I don't just say, you're fired, see you later, you suck. No, I want them to have a good taste in their mouth after we part. So I'll say,
you're a better man than me.
I'm not a good fit, and here's what you're looking for, and here's what I suggest. And I found that when I do that, even these toxic folks will grumble very little because I've at least given them the answer as I step out the door. But in firing these clients, rather than waiting for it to drag on for a year and make my life miserable, and I hate graphic design now, I'll fire them immediately if they're not a good fit, because my time is my money and I need the money to keep the lights on.
I would say the way that I look at it, and put it this way. So first off, massive thank you to Upwork for at long last giving me a fantastic hoodie. But on the other sleeve, we've got something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is something that has been very effective in this entire process of Upwork and in life as well, which is rule number one. The thing about a toxic client is that it affects more than just your earnings. It drags you down mentally. It creates problems for you, but the biggest piece is it slows you down, slows down your growth. And having any sort of drama, negativity, problems that you allow, because you are in control of this, that you allow over your doorstep, that is going to slow you down in the direction that you are going. And you cannot have that because it will cause problems for you. So in the situation, there's a couple of antidotes to avoiding toxic clients, which, client selection is a big one. And it's one that I like to talk about a lot. Incidentally, I just recorded a bunch of clips for a video that I'm going to be putting out on YouTube in a couple of weeks, maybe, of here are the top 15 clients and the things that they say that if they say these things, never ever work for them, because these are the things that you need to watch out for, right? You have to have an extremely strong client filter that does not allow you to get into a situation in the first instance where you have a toxic client. However, if you do find yourself in there, and especially if you couldn't have foreseen it, then you want to probably just get out of it as quickly as you realize that this is a potential scenario. Because if your gut's telling you, hey, there's a problem that's brewing here, then address it as quickly as possible. Try and find an amicable solution as quickly as you can. If it means that you are having to give refunds, and I have given big ones, then yes, do it, because you will be short money, but you'll be short money on one instance. You won't hold back your earnings for the next 10 projects because you have a black mark of a review on your profile. So you sacrifice today and say, you know what? I made a bad mistake of taking on this client. Accept it, but accept it quickly and get out, as diplomatically and as easily as you possibly can. And as gently as you can. And like you said, good strategy of, hey, listen, I'm clearly not the right person for this, but here's what you might, you might be better off with somebody else, and I'd be happy to help you find that person, or assist you in giving you maybe a bit more criteria that you might want to look for that could help you. And people might be receptive to that. Some maybe not, but others might be very happy to at least see that and are acknowledging that you have the limitations on your own skills, and they're not going to be beating a dead horse trying to get something out of you that you're just not going to want to or be able to deliver to them. So get out fast, but always learn. Look back at the situation from the outside in and say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I have improved? And could I have seen this coming? And if I could have seen it coming, what is the thing that I should have known that now if I ever see that again, I'm never going to do that a second time?
Yeah. That's 100% nailed it. I think a lot of it comes down to identifying the red flags in job postings. And during the interview process, that scoping and the questions you're asking, you can find all of this out. And I think we're at a point in our careers now where I find out within the first 5 minutes of interacting with someone whether or not I'm going to work with them. And I know what questions to ask, and I can read this responses I get back. So it's important to be able to dial those in. Folks, I just put in the chat section some links I posted a few times. As the Academy, which has some great learning paths if you're new to the platform, how to write good proposals, how to dial in your portfolio and your overview, things like that. And then I also posted the link to Upwork community events. This recording will be on there in a couple days, as well as all of our historical recordings. There's a lot of fantastic information in there. Same sort of things where we're talking to professionals like Evan on how to write good proposals, how to win, how to raise your rates, all that good stuff. Bookmark them, tattoo them on your arm, whatever you need. It's gold
Don't
in
do
there.
that. Don't ever do that.
Yeah, the URL might
Yeah.
change. Maybe don't tattoo it. But now
Yeah,
I know that there were. Please.
I was going to jump in and just say I haven't been able to actually figure out how to type in the chat in a way that I can type to everybody. But I wanted to say first off, thank you everyone for coming in the first instance, because to take the time out of your day. I appreciate the time that you have given. So, I'm glad to answer any more questions that we might have for whatever time we have, Will. But please go ahead.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll take a few more questions. I've changed the settings so you can type in the chat there. Sorry. If you wouldn't mind, Evan, while I find some questions here, do you want to post some of the resources where they can see some of the other materials you've done? I know you have a YouTube channel, but I know there's a lot of people asking how they can get some of this other information. If you'd put those in there for folks.
Into the chat?
Yes, you should be able to chat to everyone now.
Okay, got it. Here we go.
So good question here that I'll start while you're filling that in. Is it okay to start with a low rate projects to gain feedback? This is a two-part question, and the first one I'm going to address here, and Evan, you correct me if your experience has been different.
Yep.
I have found that the most budget clients, the clients that are saying, oh, it's a tiny project, I'm going to pay you cents on the dollar, they're going to ask the world of you. And those are going to end up taking all of your time outside of the scope. Whereas the clients that are willing to pay you more for your time generally trust that you're a professional and will let you roll with it in the way you roll with it. So when you're first starting off, it is a strategy to have low rates just to get your foot in the door and get some reviews. I was guilty of that. I did it. But it set me up for a longer ramp time, because then clients that I was trying to get after I was just doing a real budget rate were like, well, Will, you did this for $10 before. Why are you charging me $50 now? So it's a double-edged sword. And typically the budget clients are the ones that are going to give you the most grief. What's your thoughts on that, Evan?
Yeah, so in real time, I'm trying to make a diagram of what I think about this. And the interesting thing, if I'm able to actually create it, is, and we'll see if we can do it in like black. As you raise your rate, the headache factor of clients goes something like this. So with actually that's wrong direction. Let's see, if rate goes across the bottom and headache is across the side, then that's what your headaches are going to look like, right? So all of that to mean in the early days, if you're consistently keeping a lower rate, then yes, clients that are hiring for lower rates, in my experience, again, are probably going to be looking for something that is more of a budget offering. And if you are wanting to do something really awesome, then at a certain point in time, that's going to be too much of a headache for you. But the weird thing that happens is that inverts very quickly, in that clients that are paying more are actually a much smaller headache. So I found that as I went further and further along and raised rates higher and higher, my headaches actually decreased a heck of a lot, especially when it's something that you see over time and niching down, that when you are charging a higher price for something, but within a very specific niche that you know very well at that point, and it's a process, when you are charging a higher rate, then it'll be easier to work with those clients because they're more professional, they're easier to work with, they're maybe more organized, more clear on what it is that they need. That's generally been my experience. Not always. There is an inversion here on the right side of things, where you have, once you get past a certain threshold, yeah, clients expect a lot, and rightfully so, because if they're paying the absolute highest rates, yeah, they're going to have expectations. And you may run up against headaches again, but that is something that you can manage by, again, rinse and repeating this process and delivering at a higher level across all facets of the product or service that you are delivering. So that you can sort of taper it down by a function of your own skills. But yeah, when people are paying 50 grand for you to work for them, then yes, they are going to have expectations. But I would argue that those expectations of just general good business and good service and et cetera are nowhere near as difficult or toxic or anything as when you're at a lower rate. That's where it hurts the most, especially because, and I saw this too, and Will, tell me if you had this experience as well. You look at the job from your perspective as a freelancer. If you've got it going, then you've got a client where you've got a potential headache from, and you look at the job and you're like, this job is only paying me insert blank here of a small amount of money, and you're like, and it's that big of an issue, like, why is this so annoying to me, right? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's a quick way to burn yourself out on the type of work you're doing, very,
Mm-hmm.
very quickly.
If you have, anybody who is watching in the chat, if you have seen that happen, then put like a frustrated emoji into the chat, because I feel like that is something that has happened to basically everybody, and that the quickest way around that is to, yeah, I see a lot of frustrated emojis. It's something that you get over. You can get over that, and you do get over that by upping your game and saying actively, I am not going to play in this arena anymore. I am not going to, like, and I have made the same mistake too. I have also gone back and said, like, oh, you know what? I want some extra money. Like, let's drop the price and let's see, and I want it. Let me just take it. Every single time I've done that, every single time that I have done that, it always ended up being a mistake, a big, massive mistake. So the way around that is forward momentum and continue to grow up until the point where you are comfortable with your skills versus what the client expects from you, and where you find yourself in a good spot where what you're delivering is creating the minimum amount of headaches, because it's going to end up benefiting you, and you will see some massive growth really, really fast. Then you can see how far you want to push it and see how far you want to go into that direction, because that's where exponential growth happens. And incidentally, Will, is one of those things that we had chatted about before this call, where if we're looking at how we are multiplying earnings, I started off first job 200, within 12 months 2000. Even within the last 12 months, the most recent 12 months, that rate has doubled of what we charge for what we do along similar scopes. The difference being those intangibles, which are, okay, we do a little bit better than this, what you learn in 24 hours, but getting to the level of strategy that gets built in as, what are we talking about in terms of thought leadership? What is actually the best out there? And so all of that to say, even if you were, in in the top rated plus category, even if you have just broken 200 grand in earnings, like a bunch of the people who dropped some of the comments on YouTube, that even if you are at that level, yes, there is still some significant multiplying effects that you can see. You can still double. You can probably still triple. You can maybe even quadruple your rates, because there is almost certainly a lot of room that you have left to go up to what the top is going to be charging. So if Pentagram is charging for a logo, if Pentagram is charging for a logo process endeavor for a superstar client, if they're charging $250,000, $500,000, what do you charge for a logo? If you are charging anywhere near that, then we got to talk. But if unless you are even remotely close to that price of whatever Pentagram is charging for their graphic design projects, and specifically the strategic things, unless you are already hot on their heels, then you got a long way to go where you can still raise your rates and get away from any headaches that you might see, and build into, let's call it the real business level of things, because a lot of clients on Upwork that are willing and are looking for the best.
Absolutely, and I think that applies to you, whether or not you're in the beginning stages of building a business and you're having trouble getting traction. Maybe spending some time working on those skills surrounding it to work your way up the pyramid, so you're not working at a tier two, is an intelligent use of time. But fantastic information. Evan, do you have time for one more, or do we need to call it?
Oh, 100%. Let's get it.
All right. So this one, circling back to proposals, and the general sort of boiled down question would be, how much customization versus prepared content do you use when creating a proposal?
Interesting question. So it all depends on, I would say there's a relationship between how well you know your client base versus what you like. If you know that something works, then that's going to be, you're going to be very, very able to just know what you're going to need to do, what you're going to need to write in order to hit the hot button issues in the right order that you're going to be winning. That said, probably 80% of proposals that I send these days still get turned down. So understand that there is no magic piece here for anybody. But to answer that directly, for me, it's probably going to be around about 60%. I know exactly what I need to get into a given proposal, because there's going to be standard questions, like I said, that I'm going to need to know the answers to before it's even worth considering a meeting with a client for me. But bear in mind, like, I have spoken with, and we're talking well beyond number of proposals or number of clients that I've messaged or anything like that. I've spoken with thousands. So I know what I need at this point. If you are in the early days and you don't know exactly what it is that your niche is, or you don't know exactly what it is that clients are going to be looking for in that niche that's going to get the job done, and you don't know how to talk about what it is that they want to achieve, then you should be actively customizing and testing and trying out and experimenting with all sorts of approaches. So your prepared amount of prepared material versus what you should be specifically focusing on, your level of prepared material should be far, far lower than that. The most important part of any proposal is going to be that personalized side of things. If you really want to win jobs, personalize. Just focus on personalizing to what a client's going to want and be frustrated with and want help with, and then present yourself as a solution. That will do a lot for you. Really?
That's an interesting thing you bring up with pointing to their frustrations. That's a very quick way to get on someone's radar on their short list of interview candidates. Um, I found that I do a lot of A/B testing when I was trying to find my voice in my proposals, where I have a general structure. Mine's about 3 paragraphs typically. The last one is the about me, which doesn't really change that much unless there's an industry specific lean. But you need to show that you've read the thing so that they know it's not a copy and paste. Bring
Yep.
back some of what they said, address it, use their terminology, ask questions. If you're not putting questions in your proposal, you're going to have a hard time engaging in conversations. We are hardwired to
I
respond to a
disagree
question.
with you
You
so
think?
hard on that.
Yeah,
I disagree with you so hard on
that's
that
interesting.
with an asterisk. If it is an intentional, targeted, hard hitting question, and you know exactly what you should be asking and why, and what sort of response you're trying to elicit out of a client, uh, then yes, it absolutely is a strategy. That said, not always. Example, if it's very, very intentional, there's 2 ways of approaching something. If I wrote an email to you, Will, and it said, "Dear Will, colon," and that was it, then what is going through your head when you receive that email?
I'm like, what's going on?
Correct. So if I've intentionally done that so that I get you to send me an email back saying, "Hey, I think that this was like an empty message. You know, what is this about?" Uh, as long as that was intentional from my side, that I wanted you to respond to me because you have gone away for 3 weeks and you haven't responded to me, Will, then I've achieved my goal. I've gotten you to
That's fair.
respond with a
Yeah.
very specific tactic. The other way around, if we're going back and forth and you have sent me a message saying, "Hey, where's my work?" and I write back to you, "Dear Will, colon," you're going to be more frustrated, and that was probably unintentional because I shouldn't have done that. It's only like a lead on tactic. So when it's a specific tactic, yes. When it's just, "Hey, I just want to ask a bunch of questions and hopefully that'll get you to respond to me," nah, no.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You
I would
want
say
to
that the
have
ones
those
that worked
questions
well
going
for
back and
me,
forth.
as you said, the targeted, were specifically around deliverables. So, like in the graphic design space, they say, like, "Yes, I've seen your project, the logo, blah blah blah." Like, what file output types are you needing? I typically do these. Things related to the scope of work are typically what I will do to get them to engage in conversation. Because if I can get them to engage in conversation, I'll get them, no problem. But
Right.
getting that initial, "Hey, Will, I see that you're interested in the job." That's the key, isn't it?
hmm Yeah. And there's 100 different ways to accomplish it. I would say the questions approach is a more advanced level of thinking that you have to really know what you're asking and why, uh, and that you're hitting on some hot button things that people really, really like need to respond to, because otherwise it's just a question, and they're going to be getting 100 other questions from 100 other people that they are also not going to be responding to. So with that in mind, it's you got to be very, very intentional. Yes, it works, but not always. So yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent qualification on that one. Totally agree. Arbitrary questions are going to get you tossed out immediately.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Well, Evan, thank you so much for taking the time here. We've got to draw this to a close. Though I know that there were thousands of questions. I tried to get to the most overarching questions as we can. We will be having future sessions, and Evan, I believe, is joining us next month in a sort of panel discussion. So keep an eye out for those invites.
Yeah.
Take a look at the events page here. Really looking forward to some of those talks. And Evan, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it, and I can tell by the chat that so do our attendees.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say specifically, Nick Perry and Marianne Skorka, congratulations on both of your success. Marianne, in fact, just hit top rated plus, absolute killer. And for anybody who is here who doesn't know about what it is that we're doing or what it is that I do, best place to check us out is youtube.com/freelancemvp or on freelancemvp.com. and yeah, that's where you're going to learn some really cool stuff. So I
Perfect.
appreciate everybody for attending as well. Uh, Love it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.